In this video, I'll be discussing about the auto scaling group. It is also called as ASG, and the primary goal of an ASG is to provide features such as scale in, scale out, and also maintain minimum and maximum number of instances for a web application. So let's say you have a web application and that requires certain resources, certain course of RAM and memory and a disk space, and you have user activity as well. And during the day hours or weekdays, you may have higher number of users connecting to the application. So during that peak hours of time, you may want to increase or scale up or scale out your resources. So basically the same web application would be part of multiple EC2 instances, right? So this is how you will do this scale out or scale up. And during the weekends or during night hours, you don't want to keep like more number of resources running, so you can actually scale down in those scenarios. Of course, there are certain algorithms and CloudWatch alarms. So here's the pictorial diagram wherein you will have users connecting to load balancers, so that decides which request has to go to which particular web service, right? So there are certain parameters here. If you notice, you can actually set an initial number of instances for an ASG to be 1. So you have to start your application with at least one single EC2 machine as a starting point. And once this is started, you may want to set a minimum number of EC2 instances that are required whether there is a user activity or not, right? At least there should be 2 EC2 instances that should support application 24/7. And during the peak hours, let's say there are more number of users trying to access application, you can actually set the other parameter, which is max equal to 10. So what this means is you can, based on the traffic and user connections and CPU usage, you can scale your instances up to 10, because you don't want to cross this limit and cause a lot of cost issues. So you will have to ASG takes these parameters to set up the initial number of resources, minimum number of resources for our application, and the maximum to control the cost, right? So these three parameters are defined, and it is used in the actual web applications. And moving on, here are some of the attributes of an auto scaling group. The first one is a configuration. So you will have to set up a certain configuration for a web application, right? When you spin up the same application in multiple EC2 instance, you may have to set certain user permissions or security or some sort of application customization. So those type of configurations are also called as launch configurations. Is one of the attributes of an ASG. And second one is the capacity. You can actually set up the capacity based on the alarms to be higher capacity or the lower capacity, such as CPUs or memory or the disk usage, right? And the third aspect is the network, and then the scaling and load balancing information, right? You should be giving informations on which load balancer to scale out or scale in, right? So that is an important attribute of an ASG. And the most important one is the CloudWatch alarms. So CloudWatch alarms, you can actually set multiple metrics. For example, when my CPU goes above 90%, you will have to scale up, right? Or else if my network activity goes really high, you will have to scale up. Or if the number of connections to an application goes up, then you set the scaling up, right? Scale up or scale out. That means increasing number of instances of web applications. So let's say your number of user connections dropped off, and your CPU is also dropped off, or your network activity is dropped off to, let's say, 50% for consecutive 5 minutes.